نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Respected ulama, brothers and sisters, it is indeed a time, as always, but more particularly when you hear of things like the death of a Muslim leader, like the democratically elected president of Egypt who passed on, or was rather, in real terms, by implication, assassinated, then one tries to give more deeper thought and reflect on why is the Ummah going through these trials and tribulations. One sometimes thinks that, oh Allah, isn't this enough, what is happening to us, particularly for the last century. We have now already entered, after 100 years, a period where we should be also starting to reflect that this was the time between the First World War, which literally started in 1913 and continued until 1923 with the end and the demise, for the first time in Islamic history, of an empire, of a rule, for whatever it was worth, but it was still a caliphate. So the fall of the Ottoman Empire is also relevant in the next 6-7 years, because this was that real turmoil that took place in our history. There was always problems right from the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidin. There were assassinations, there were killings, and that kind of history and struggle for power did exist. But on the whole, the Ummah was still in many ways united. And while we might not fully grasp and understand it, we actually are still in many ways united. And that example of that unity is in our practical life. It is the only community and the only religion where you can go to any part of the world, even in this age of division and diversity of a kind and so on. But as you are sitting here now, you could be sitting in Jakarta, you could be sitting in Kuala Lumpur, you could be in Mecca and Medina, you could be in Jerusalem, you could be in London, you could be in Chicago, you could be in any masjid anywhere in the world, and you'll see the same vibe and atmosphere as we're observing here. And it is for that reason that I'm saying that basically we're still united. There may be lots of reasons for not being united or not seeming to be united, but in our core essence, we're still a united ummah. But we are not an effective ummah. Because when the verse was revealed, and this is the verse which is quoted often, and you've heard it as I will recite now, you've heard this verse, but this verse establishes something that is very, very unique. And this verse is telling us that you are a very special ummah. Kuntum khayra ummatin. 3-4 words. You are the best of nations. And it doesn't say in any way that you are the best of nations while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is alive. It doesn't put any conditions. You are the best of ummah from the time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam announced it until the day of judgment. It's not time related. So in the context of this verse, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, this is where we need to ponder. That you are the best of nation. Why? Because you will have oil and you'll be wealthy? Definitely no. Because you'll have many, many scientists and intellectuals and you'll be the most learned community that ever existed in the history of mankind? Definitely not. It qualifies what it refers to as the best of nations. أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. You have been created virtually for the Ummah. You are the best of Ummah, and you have been created so that you can serve humanity. And how do you serve humanity? It's not Muslims. How do you serve humanity as a whole? تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. You order, you encourage, you set the patterns for goodness. Bil-ma'roof. Anything that is good. Ma'roof refers not just to your prayers, not just to your fasting, not just for your hajj, not just your zakah and your iman, but in every way. You create goodness for mankind, not just for Muslims. At the same time, this ummah, which is the best of ummah, also has the compulsory duty, while they spread goodness, they also make effort to fight evil. وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Everything that is wrong. Look at one of the beauties of the Quran is that one should study in a khutbah like this. You can't go into detail, but you need to know why certain words are used in the Quran on certain occasions and in certain words. It doesn't say sin. It says munkar. There's lots of words for sin, zamb and practicing ways of the devil, and there's literally 200-300 words that can describe sin. But the one chosen here by Almighty Allah is munkar. That means anything that is negative. It's not a question of just you forbid what is haram. It doesn't refer to just, it's not narrowed to fixed issues of what is halal and what is haram. It goes beyond that. Anything that is not healthy and leads, that would include things like pollution, that would include so many other things that happen in this world, like randomly cutting of trees, randomly mistreating animals. All that will come under munkar. It's not that we don't make 5 salah, so that is munkar. No, it goes far beyond that, and it is in reference to humanity. And in this time and age, and at all times, the verses like these become very significant. Whether we like it or whether we don't like it. If something is not right, we need to say it to each other, correct each other, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's anybody. We need to correct each other. And one of the things that is very, very clear and obvious is that we are not an ummah anymore that is carrying out these 2 fundamental duties of ya'muruna bil ma'ruf, that we are ordering goodness and forbidding all that is negative and that is wrong. We are not doing that as we should be doing it. Because if we were carrying out those duties, if we are doing and carrying out the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then this masjid, as I'm standing here, should be seeing more indigenous people. Automatically. I don't have to go into details. If that hasn't happened for 350 years, then we have been off track. It's simple as that. If there are not enough people of this country in this masjid and any other masjid, then we have gone wrong. I don't have to go into any other detail. We have not given the message correctly, because the demographics indicate that something is not in order. As I stand here and I look at the audience, I feel I could be talking to a group of people in India or in Pakistan or in London. There's nothing in this masjid that makes me feel that I'm in Africa or I'm talking to an African audience. There's nothing. Understand me correctly. I'm not saying you all are doing wrong. Don't misunderstand me. But the demographics indicate that we have not done something right. Simple as that. We have not given the message. And we cannot say, because our history is full of example and evidence that it has happened. If we look just in Africa, let's not go away from Africa, just look at Africa, whether it's east or west. Go up north, above the SADC countries, and look at what happened there. Swahili is one of the now languages recognized by the education department, and very soon we'll be able to also teach it in our schools as an African language. But Swahili has got almost 60%, definitely over 50% Arabic words. What happened there? Where are the Arabs that came to Africa? They became part, they merged into the community. They became one with the community of East Africa. Those that went to Mauritania and Mali and Nigeria, they became one with that community. Yes, the West has now planted in our minds the thought that they are black African Muslims and Arab African. That's rubbish. History doesn't support that kind of analogy or that kind of thinking. Those Arabs became part of that African community. And beyond Africa, it also happened in the Indo-Pak world. It happened very effectively in Malaysia and Indonesia. That is not happening anymore. If you go to the USA, where the black American Muslims who came there as Muslims, the bulk of them came there as Muslims. Very few were Christians. Those that were enslaved in East Africa, West Africa in particular, were taken as slaves. And they went there, but go there. These are the first batch or the first Muslim community in America and Canada and the Caribbean. But what do you see? You still see what I see here. If I go to the masjids in Chicago, I'll have to ask somebody, is there a masjid here where I can go and make Jummah where there are more black Americans? Because they are in majority. And you'll have a struggle to find a masjid where there are black American Muslims. So even in the context of living in a Western country, as I see here, I would find it there as well. Those black American Muslims and the Arab Muslims and the Indian Muslims and the Pakistani Muslims and the Malaysian Muslims that are there are hopelessly divided. You go to a Syrian masjid, or you go to an Iraqi masjid, or you go to a Saudi masjid, or you go to an Egyptian masjid, and then you go to Pakistani masjid, which is of 2-3 different kinds, and then you go to an Indian masjid, which is also of 2-3 different kinds. Very rarely you will find a totally mixed, well-integrated Muslim community. You don't see that happening. And then we ask ourselves, what's gone wrong? But it's so glaringly wrong. It is very, very clear what is wrong. So this ummah, as explained in the Quran and as detailed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has a very specific duty. And it is that duty that makes you khayra ummah, the best of ummahs, the best of nations. There's a duty attached to it. It is not just because you say the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah that you become an ummah and everything is okay. No, no, no. There's action related to it. You have to be active. Our action today generally has become that of adopting what the West has told us is success. In most of our discussions and gatherings, in our functions, who or what is highlighted in the general trend of it is a person is successful if he is wealthy. Wealth and material possession has become the criteria to judge success. And it goes totally, totally against anything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught, and definitely goes against dozens or probably tens of verses of the Holy Quran. Nowhere are we told that we are the best of nations because we are the richest of nations. Because in real fact, we are the richest of nations, even materially. It's just that we don't know how to use that material wealth Islamically. But that is not, success is what is in the heart, the quality of the iman, the quality of the taqwa. That is where success is decided. The civilization and the culture of the Muslims is a civilization and culture that does not allow what has become today in terms of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Islam doesn't have that. Knowledge for the sake of recognition of the greatness of Almighty Allah. Whether we're doing physics or biology or geometrics or any kind of modern science or anything that we are learning, psychology, medicine, whatever it might be, is not knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It is a knowledge for the sake of a purpose, and that purpose is to serve humanity, first and foremost, to serve Muslims, and to be obedient to Allah. So we acquire knowledge for that purpose. We don't need to be rulers of governments and be in power and be prime ministers and presidents, because that is not an objective. It should happen, and when Almighty wills, it will happen, but that is not an objective of a Muslim. Power for the sake of power is nothing to do with Islam. To have Muslim rulers is not an objective. We must strive for it, we must try and get it done, but it's not an objective. The objective is taqwa. The objective is purity of iman, wherever you are. And if Almighty wishes, He will give you the power to rule automatically. That will come. Those are incidentals. It comes. To make discoveries and inventions, not for the sake of inventions. Because when you're doing things for the pleasure of Allah, you're always going to do it correctly. So you're only going to invent something that is beneficial to mankind. You won't get involved in a science that leads to the nuclear bomb. You won't discover something that creates a social media that is 99% gossip and probably 1% something good. And we're all hooked onto it. Hooked in such a way that sometimes we do it in the masjid as well. That iPhone or cell phone comes out, and yes, you can listen to the Quran in there, you can do a lot of good things in there, but the nature of how these inventions have taken over, because like you can block so many things, you could block pornography on these phones. It can be done, the technology exists. But part of these inventions and discoveries is to corrupt mankind. So those things won't be done. Because the people who invented it didn't have goodness in their mind. But the ummah, khaira ummah, has goodness in the mind. And they should be focused on doing these things. But because we're not doing what we're supposed to do, I'm not even touching on the quality of iman and how to create powerful iman, how to become a muttaqi. Those are essentials. It has to be done. But just in terms of worldly things that we are doing, we are not keeping Almighty Allah, and more particularly for the proper worship of Almighty Allah, everything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught. The recipe is there. We have to discover nothing. The Quran is totally complete. There's no such thing. Don't get into the mode of some of our so-called modernists, bright scholars, whatever name one calls them, and think that in this age of technology, the Quran has to be reinterpreted. By God, that's kufr. Islam is complete. The Quran says so. The only religion where it says it is complete. And you know who appreciates that? The Jewish community. They tell you people are fools, man. Your religion says it is complete. You don't even understand that. So if it is complete, our iman has no room to say something must be reinterpreted. Reinterpreted for what? You think Almighty Allah gave us a Quran that needs reinterpretation? Which mind are we thinking with? That thought could come, because the shaitan does whisperings, it must be chucked out of our souls immediately. It must be literally cut with a knife out of our system. There's no room for that. And to delve in saying that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have done this if he was living in this age. I mean, that's blasphemy, people. You think Almighty Allah allowed Rasulullah to say something that's not relevant for this age? It's not possible. Everything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught and is recorded in an authentic hadith is valid until Yawm al-Qiyamah. We have no right to say it is going to change, it should change, because circumstances are different. We're going to allow something because there's too much intermingling of the sexes and we can't do this, we can't do. No. The intermingling is haram. That is wrong. Put that right. Don't change the Sharia. That's not going to be accepted. Now, is this kind of thinking, brothers, that has made us what we are today? No respect. This is one of those communities today, there's no respect. That's why they can now say that we're going to take over Jerusalem, we're going to now annex West Bank. They walk in with their boots into Masjid al-Aqsa and do what they want. All that is happening. And where are we? It doesn't mean that to be there we must take arms. That's also not the way to do it. What Almighty says is, look at yourselves, contemplate, think, become a muttaqi, adopt taqwa. The rest is Allah's hands. Almighty is there. He has all the powers to say kun and everything can change instantly. Before I finish my talk, it could change. Almighty has that power. Not even before I finish it. Before I even say what I want to say, it can happen. Almighty has that power. But Almighty is not going to exercise that power until we decide, I want to change. Not we want to change, I want to change. My family is going to change because I'm going to initiate it. My extended family is going to change. My community is going to change because I want to be involved in that community. I'm not going to live for the sake of my personal comfort and my family's comfort. Because Islam has never denied comfort, provided you live as a khaira ummah, as the best of nations, and carry out all those rules. And an hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes it very clear, how do you live in this world? How do you live in this world? The Prophet ﷺ said, Inna dunya khulikat lakum, that the world, everything in the world has been created for this khair ummah. If you live right, everything is created for us. And you have been created lil akhirah. Our real purpose is the akhirah, nothing of this dunya. And Rasulullah went further on to say, I am living in this world as if I am resting for a few moments under the shade of a tree. I am a traveler. This world is not meant for me. Rasulullah implied, this world is not meant for me. I am just a traveler taking a few moments rest under the shade. And that is our approach to our life and our culture and our civilization. We're not here forever. Even in time, in terms of human calculation of time. What is 80 years? What is 70 years? What is 100 years? One line in history, if you deserve to be mentioned. That's all. Time-wise, it's nothing. We are nothing. We are, as Rasulullah says, sitting for a moment under that shade. And for that moment, we want to do 101 wrong things. Instead of concentrating for those few seconds of life that we have to do the right thing. Almighty is not asking too much from us. He's merely saying, the recipe is there, the Quran is there, the Sunnah is there. Follow it to the letter and real success will come to you. We must realize, brothers, that the change can only come from us. It is not going to come from Almighty Allah. And if we persist, then Almighty Allah does step in His own way and His own. And there's enough hadiths as to what will happen eventually. We're not going to go into that. But Islam, Muslims will disappear, Muslims will suffer, Muslims will go wrong, Islam will remain in its pure state as it was revealed, as it started with Nabi Adam alayhi salam, went through all the Anbiyas, was finalized with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran was always there, the Quran is there, the Sunnah is there, so we can't say we don't know. And eventually, if we do not comply, Almighty will step in with His own plan, but you and I will not be part of that plan. So in conclusion, I just want to read this few lines. Know the value of Islam and being a Muslim. The greatest gift that Almighty has given to human beings is Islam and being a Muslim, a true believing Muslim. Focus, Muslims, on building a character-based society with pure Iman. Hold on and be proud of your culture and civilization, as against a civilization that has no benefits for Muslims. Muslims are required to be the leaders so that mankind can complete its submission to Almighty Allah, with no room for blind following of worldly material gain, which resembles success, but in reality is total failure. So brothers, the ball is in our court. We need to change. Then things like the assassination or supposed assassination, whatever way we're going to look at it, of people like Mursi, won't come as a surprise, or this thing is, far greater caliphs have been slaughtered and assassinated in our history. We need to look at things in the correct way. And then we need to study our Islamic history to find out how things were cured, how things were put right. Our history is full of it. It's not that you and I are facing a time period and an age where things are all going wrong. There's enough in our history that we need to learn and find out. So brothers, each time we get together, each time we come, we remind each other. You tell me, you remind me, I will remind you, and Almighty Allah will grant us that ability and potential to once more turn around and do the right things. Almighty Allah is Rahim. He's absolutely merciful. We need to experience that mercy. He doesn't want us to be bad. He doesn't want us to go wrong. It's we who choose to go wrong. So brothers, let us, each time we get together, refocus, make a niyyah that we want to be good Muslims and we want to avoid the kind of things that are happening today, but we need to get ourselves and get our house in order, and inshallah, we will achieve what Almighty Allah wants us to achieve. Jazakumullah.
Jazakumullah.